Hey, it's Paris. You know, I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
The problem with the personal narrative disruption is you start making up storylines and you start trying to put a puzzle together, but there's so many missing pieces. I have no idea what I'm creating. And if my mind is creating things that are just so off base. So I'm trying to put my narrative back together, but I'm creating it from a lot of missing pieces. It's like trying to build a house, but I don't have a strong enough foundation to hold up any wall or any theory.
Welcome to DNA Surprises, a podcast that delves into the world of unexpected DNA discoveries. I'm your host, Alexis Auersalt. In July 2021, my life took a surprising turn when I found out that I'm an NPE, a person who has experienced a non-paternal event. In other words, my biological father isn't who I thought he was. Join me as we explore the stories of NPEs, adoptees, and donor-conceived people and their families. Get ready to unravel the astonishing journeys that begin with a simple DNA test. This is DNA Surprises. Much like life, DNA surprises are rarely tied up in a perfect bow. We don't get answers to all of the questions we have, and it's up to us to make peace with that, or keep digging. In this week's episode, Angie shares how she uncovered that she has a different biological father than her 4 sisters. She details her effort to find the truth when most of the people with answers have passed, and how she's navigating that uncertainty. Thank you for sharing your story, Angie.
I'm Angie, and I'm 60, and I live in Charlotte. In 2015, I took 23andMe. A friend of mine was like, hey, have you heard of 23andMe? My family and I, we just did it, and it gives you a lot of data about your health, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, I've seen those commercials, but I don't know if I want to do that. What do you think? And then they took it and I said, what'd you think? Did you get good information? And so I did it. I took it and I got the results back and it said I was 49% Ashkenazi Jewish. And there was no doubt in my mind that it was wrong. I was like, oh, I knew these things were fake. I knew they were all just a hype. I knew this was a money-making thing. So my first thought was just that it was a joke, that everybody was buying into this scam. My grandma always used to say, we're German, Irish, and Dutch. It doesn't amount to much. That was like her cute little song about it. Mm-hmm. And then I understood that my dad's side was also German. Didn't know as much about that side because my parents were divorced. And so I was like, yes, no, we have no Jewish, ancestry. So I put it away. I didn't think anything of it. I truly didn't. One of my sisters has always told me I'm a great compartmentalizer. And I realized that I'm not just a good compartmentalizer, I'm almost an expert at it, which is ironic because I teach that there is no such thing, that we can pretend that we're compartmentalizing, but we're really not, because it sort of seeps in like a slow leak in your shower and it's always there. Mm-hmm. But I think in this situation, it really didn't, because I really didn't believe it. So I really don't think it had any impact on my emotional health, because I really truly thought it was a joke. So fast forward a few years, and I have four sisters, and one of them called me one day and said, Angie, have you ever taken 23andMe? And I was like, okay, Trace, the gig is up. Like, yes. Like, why are you asking? She said, well, my daughters took it. I don't know how to say this. And I said, well, just Trace, just say it, like kind of come out with it. And I could feel my heart racing then. And I could feel me starting to realize that just that awareness, that first glimmer of, oh my God, like, wait a minute. So I said, so what did it say? She's like, it said like I can't remember, it might have been like a first cousin or something, or I can't remember what it called me. And she goes, but here's the deal. I'm testing too. They bought me a kit. I had a lot of thoughts coming in all at once. And one of them was, oh, so A, it might be true. And B, I felt almost betrayed isn't the right word, but it felt like now my sister was going to test because everybody was curious. It was almost like I was the test tube, and now we needed to like test all the other test tubes, and we needed to see. It was more out of like morbid curiosity than concern. Not that my sister wasn't concerned, but it felt to me like, oh, so now we're all going to test because now we all want to know. So I got the impression that her daughters were pushing her to test because they wanted the goods. And I don't mean that in any, I'm not saying that was true, but it was kind of like it's that family thing where it's juicy. And so you kind of want to know what the story is.
Were you wanting her to test? Were you hoping to get more answers at that point?
Yeah, then I was, because then I opened my computer and I was like, So I said, okay, Trace. And she goes, it takes a while. And I was like, I know. Admittedly, I was checking my computer probably daily. And I remember that day I opened my computer before I even got her call. And it said half sister. And I just remember thinking, ouch, ouch, ouch. But almost like on the verge of an emotional collapse, and then on the verge of I am numb. And then within minutes, my phone rang. And I said, you don't have to tell me, I already saw it.
What did she say?
I'm sorry, Angie, I really don't know what to say. And then she said, it doesn't matter. You're my sister no matter what. And then I said, but it does matter. That's the thing. It might not matter to you. And she said, that's not what I mean. And I was like, and I know I wasn't being fair. I was like, damn it does matter. Okay. So a friend of mine calls it a personal narrative disruption. And I call it a sucker punch. That's a good description. Right?
Yeah.
A personal narrative disruption. I'm like, yeah, Kelly, that's a nice way of saying a sucker punch. So I let it pause for a minute and I went back to where most of my sisters live. And for Mother's Day, I bought them all a kit. And I said, spit. And two of them were like, I'm not doing that. And I go, yes, you are. And we got into like a sister disagreement. And I said, and my one sister was like, I don't want to do that. I want my information out there. And I said, it's not about you. And she goes, well, how is it about you? And I go, it's about me because apparently I'm the outlier. I'm the bastard child. And I want to know, am I the only one? And she goes, well, I don't want to know. And I said, I don't care. I want to know. And the only way I'm going to know if I'm the only outlier is if you guys do it. Do it for me. So we went back and forth, back and forth. And finally, I was like, I'm not leaving here until you both spit. And so they did. And then my one sister was like, I'll turn it in. I go, She goes, oh my God, you don't even trust me? And I go, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I bought the kids. I'm turning them in.
So at this point, your sisters all know that this has happened. And what is their reaction to this?
You know how families are like the telephone tree? And one person knows, and the next thing you know, 50 people know. I'm very close to my sisters, but I was disappointed in some of the theories.
So they start conjecturing about what may have happened.
So it turned out that, my dad wasn't my dad. So it went from everything from rape. Mom might have been raped. And I was like, pause that thought and ask yourself what that might feel like from where I'm sitting. I realize you're protecting mom and you don't want me to think that this, that, or the other. But that's about as far south and ugly. And it makes me feel not just like I'm the bastard child, but I am, because I did everything. I went back to, wait, when was Roe v. Wade passed? Oh my God. She couldn't have had an abortion, So my mind went everywhere. What if she didn't want me? Like, abortion wasn't legal. And then spin. What if she didn't want me? What if she tried to get an abortion? What if she was too afraid to do an abortion? What if? And so then when they came up with the rape conjecture, I was like, don't go there. Don't make me that person that came from a trauma. I don't want to be a trauma baby.
And where are you in birth order compared to your sisters?
The youngest.
And were your parents married at the time that you were born?
So, yes. So they got divorced when I was about 1. And I said to my sisters when all this was happening and there's all these theories flying around, and there were other ones that were not any prettier. I said to them, do any of you remember sitting at the table? I said I was either in high school or college. And we were all very, very, very close. My mom raised 5 girls on her own. So we were very, very close. There was a lot of scarcity. My dad that I thought was my dad didn't play child support. So there's a lot of scarcity. There was probably what you could fairly call trauma bonding, where you're in the single parent household back in the 60s. Women weren't supposed to be single, not a lot of money. Keep it behind closed doors, right? We're going to be fine. We just stick together.
Yeah.
I said to them, don't you remember, I was either in high school or college, and we were having one of our excuses to get together, because we would get together, if the sun came up. And we were just always gathering together, even as adults. And I said, I remember sitting there, and somebody said something that never seemed to fit the math. And I said, is Dad really my dad? And I said, and you guys got quiet. We were very protective of my mom. She was our savior. Without her, we would have been out on the streets. We would have been in foster care. We were protective of her. Again, a little bit of trauma bonding, but it got quiet as a church mouse. And everybody looked at me like I had just said the most egregious thing I could have said to our mom. And none of them claimed they remember that. And I said it was either college or high school. And I said, my takeaway was you guys got quiet for one of 2 reasons. Either you all knew something and no one was going to fess up, or you really thought that whatever, just my assumption, if you will, was very egregious and insulting to mom. And I said, and I remember all that night spinning, whether it was high school or college, and thinking, so what is it? Was what I said so egregious and offensive to mom? Or do they all know something and they're not going to tell me? And none of them claim to remember that. They're all like, I don't remember that. I don't remember that. And they're like, what did mom do? I said, I really don't remember. I just remember she looked shocked. And I remember feeling guilty, like I had hurt her feelings. And then I remember she got up and made an excuse to go into the kitchen. And they're like, I don't remember that at all, Angie. I have no memory of that whatsoever.
Do you believe that your sisters were surprised by this information? Or do you think that they knew something, even if they pushed it out of their mind?
I believe they were surprised. But some of the other, I guess I like your word, conjectures, their suspicions, their theories. My oldest sister then told me a story. And I was like, why would you have never told me that? I just didn't think anything of it. I was only 8.5 or 9 or 10 or whatever. I was young. It was about a man and what she remembers. him coming over to the house. And now she wonders if that was him. Then she started speculating. Maybe it was this, maybe it was that, maybe that. Because after my mom and dad got divorced, like I said, it was only like one. My mom, did a fair amount of dating, but never, ever, ever got remarried, never had a live-in, like always said she would never trust a man coming into a home with 5 little girls. She was very protective of us. Like she did not trust another man helping to raise her children, because I think my mom had enough life experience to know in her mind what could happen if she was to bring the wrong man into the home, so
Yeah.
she was very protective of us. But she did do a fair amount of dating. So then they all started speculating about this man or this man, and those speculations were fine. But there's another part to the story. So when my oldest sister said she remembers a man coming over, the way I remember her telling me was that a man came over and said, "I want to see the baby." And she said she could tell even at a young age that my mom did not want him there. And then when I asked her like a year ago, she's like, "That's not what I said." But that there was a man and he did have an accent, and like maybe he was from, Poland or Romania, and he had a very strong accent. And I thought she remembered saying that he wanted to see the baby. But again, contextually, it meant nothing to her. She just could tell that he wasn't a man that mom wanted to see. Unlike other dates that might show up, and my mom would be happy to go out on a date, if you will. And then my mom passed. My mom got dementia. So when all this came out, so by the way, the other 2 sisters spit, they come in and they're all half sisters. And then my other sister took Ancestry. And so she had not taken 23andMe. So then I bought an Ancestry kit. Damn it, I wanted another outlier. Okay? I did not want to be the only bastard child.
They're all full siblings with each other.
They are. And so that was the full-on, Angie's going to have an emotional meltdown, or she's going to pack it away. So far, I haven't had that emotional meltdown. Perhaps it would be good for me. I'm really busy packing, which goes against what I help my clients with. And so 2 of them, after all this happened, and there's all this speculation about all the horrible things, maybe it's this man, or this man came and said, "I want to see the baby," or maybe she was raped, and all this is going on. And I'm like, stop the noise. Stop the noise. You're not helping me. Then 2 of them said that my mom made a comment when she was sick. My one sister said that she said that my mom was crying one day and she was very confused. And if you've ever seen dementia, you know that there's hallucinations. There can be, the brain does crazy things. And sometimes they go way back and you don't know what's true and what's not. Or sometimes they say things about you and you go, "Wow, is that what she always thought?"
Right. Yeah.
Like my one sister said that one day my mom started crying and said, "She has a different mom." And my sister kept saying, "No, Mom. No. We're all your daughters." No, she has a different mom. And she said, my mom was so frustrated, like, "Listen to me. You're not listening to me." And my sister was like, "Mom, we're all your daughters." And I was like, "Lori, why didn't you ever tell me that?" But again, she's like, "No, that isn't contextually. Mom said a lot of stuff that we didn't think anything of." But the other one that she said, and this one was to my other sister, my mom would get frustrated. The disease can be very frustrating, and they can become very agitated, and they can lash out because they've lost their sense of personal autonomy and control. And that's one of our greatest human fears. We all want to be autonomous humans. We don't want somebody to tell us what to do, especially the people that we raised. So one of my sisters was over there doing the caregiving that day, and I must have made my mom mad. Usually the person who would come over to help would make her mad because she didn't want help. So I think I might have been on my way. And my sister said that my mom said, "She's got a different dad." And my sister goes, "What, Mom?" And my mom goes, "She has a different dad." And my sister said, she said it like Spicy Mom, like the mom that we don't know that became Spicy Mom. And she goes, and I was like, "Mom, she does not have a different dad. We all have the same dad. We know who our dad is, and you're our mom." So to one of them, she said somebody has a different mom because she got confused. And then to the other one, she had said she has a different dad. But the whole thing of that story isn't necessarily about who said what. The whole thing was it made it clear to me that she did know.
Had she passed by the time you took your test? Okay.
Yeah. And so had my dad. That's not my dad.
Okay. So you couldn't go there to ask questions.
That was probably the hardest part because I could resolve it in my mind by saying she might have suspected but didn't know. But the fact that she brought it up to two of them when she was sick, when the filters are down, made me realize she knew. And I was like, oh, ow, ow, ow. She knew.
Describe how that felt.
Sometimes I feel really sorry for her because secrets are really, they're not healthy. Secrets aren't healthy. And when we hold secrets, we're kind of holding trauma. And when we hold trauma, we're not releasing it. And so that's a big hold to die with a secret. And so sometimes I feel really sorry for her that she had to hold that secret. And sometimes I feel very, very protective of her because on an intellectual level, as a mom, I can go, I get it. You got 5 daughters. Your whole world is raising them. Your whole world is keeping a roof over their head. Again, scarcity was very big, very powerful. Day to day, month to month. It was never enough. Not enough money, not enough food, not enough anything. It was the 60s. There was no child support. Women couldn't even get their own checking account back then, right? Like married women, like it was real. And so teachers didn't like us because we were like the bastard children who didn't have a dad, My mom worked nonstop. And so part of me is like, okay, Angie, I have so much empathy for her. A, she had to carry that story her whole life. It probably did not serve her with her health. But B, what would her choice have been? To tell the kid that she's the outlier. So every holiday, potentially, she's got to go with her dad while the other 4 get to be with mom and they get to have this wonderful holiday. So then I got to be the kid who's not a part of them. And I've got to grow up knowing that I'm the one who has a different dad. I'm the one who doesn't belong. I'm the one who, goes and celebrates Hanukkah while they celebrate Christmas. I'm the one who she has to share time with, but she gets the rest of us to herself.
After your parents, your birth certificate father, and your mom divorced, was he completely out of your lives at that point?
No. There's some feelings about that too, because he was in and out. So my dad went overseas for about 8 years for the military. And he got remarried over there. 2 of my oldest sisters went to live with him because my mom wanted them to have an opportunity to be abroad. And she knew that was not financially going to be something she could ever provide. And he had kind of offered, basically peace offering. Okay, I never pay child support, but I'll take a couple of them. All right, send them over. And so they went over. They had a great time. They were in high school. They had such wonderful memories. The one graduated over there. They had great memories. It was good for them. It was a great opportunity. It really was. And then the next sister in line, a couple years later, he said, okay, I'll take a couple more. Send a couple more over. And so the next sister was 16 at the time, and she had a boyfriend, and she was like, I'm not going. And then the one under her was like, I'm definitely not going. And then I was in 6th grade. I'll go. But I was only 6th grade. So we lasted 6 months. And at that time, you could tell my dad's second marriage was kind of on the rocks. There was a lot of strife there. So we went overseas for 6 months with him. But still, we weren't close. He used to scare the Jesus out of me. He was just a harsh man. Not physical harsh. He was just a harsh man. If he said, eat your dinner, you ate your dinner, right? You didn't cross him. We didn't know him. So there was never any pushing of boundaries because you don't really know this man. He's been in our lives, but not really in our lives. Like, he would pick us up when we were growing up once in a great while, like on a Sunday, and he'd take us to my grandmother's house, and he had a bunch of brothers, and they'd all like smoke and watch the Cubbies. And then the kids would all run around and play at my grandmother's house. So we spent some time with him, and I went over there in 6th grade. And then when I went to go away to college, I had a lunch with him, and something was said in that lunch. And I remember thinking, what's he mean by that? And I'm not sure I want to unpack that right now because it's more layered. But he said something.
That's okay. Mm-hmm.
And it made me go, huh? And I look back on that now, and I go, oh, I wonder if, The problem with the personal narrative disruption is you start making up storylines, and you start trying to put a puzzle together, but there's so many missing pieces. I have no idea what I'm creating. And if my mind is creating things that are just so off base. So I'm trying to put my narrative back together, but I'm creating it from a lot of missing pieces. It's like trying to build a house, but I don't have a strong enough foundation to hold up any wall or any theory. So what he said, and the reason I don't want to pack it, is it could have had no meaning to this whatsoever, but I'm giving it meaning. Or it could have. I don't know.
Yeah, it's in hindsight. We look back at all these moments and try to think, was that an opportunity? Was he trying to tell me something? Was that a hint? Totally. I think that's something that I hear over and over again, and you're not alone in that, is the trying to make sense of just every little moment and reflecting and looking back at all the little clues. And yes, that really resonates.
I'm glad I'm not the only one and it's funny because when he said it, whether it was around the time that I said his dad, my dad, whether that made me pause more, whatever the case, I never ever forgot it. And when this happened, it seemed like it definitely could have held some meaning. But then what I will say is the meaning then would be that he knew too. And I think that's what really shocked me. Because if he knew, why was he willing to play along? What happened? What happened that he was willing to play along? Because he was a man's man. Like, this is men in the 60s. Like I said, he and all his brothers were divorced. They were on wife number 2. They were, Rico Suaves. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they were just, the ego was all there, and I'm hot and you're not kind of thing, back in. And I was like, why would he have played along? Because I guess I just would have thought that.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
This episode is sponsored by Friskies, who would like to tell your cats hi. Now, if that didn't get your cat's attention, there is one thing that always does the trick. Just pour some Friskies crunchy food in the bowl and you'll hear those paws come running. Works every time. With so many Friskies choices, you can always bring your cats running from their secret napping spots. There's always more to explore. See for yourself at Friskies.com or visit your local store.
He would have.
Yeah.
The way I understand it is they were ultimately divorced when I was like 1, but he was gone years before that. He was in and out. He was having affair after affair after affair. So my theory, the way that I resolved it, was Stella got out and got her groove back one night. Stella was like, you've been doing this for years. I'm hot too. Because my mom was very, very, very attractive. Very attractive. And I was like, good. She went out one night and thought, I can do it. And that was my theory. I liked that theory. Stella got her groove back. Theory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stella wanted to be a man. Stella was like, I'm tired of men having all the fun. You're out there sleeping with everybody who will sleep with you. How about I get a chance? And then my part B of that theory is she gets pregnant, but he's in and out. And I know she loved him deeply and did not want it to end. I know she did. So my theory is he's in and out. She's not sure, but she suspects. Uh-oh. But she's not really sure. But then when all that was said to my sisters, I was like, okay, she is sure. She does know. Then I look back at what he said, and I go, I think he might have known. And then I go, shit, there goes my theory. Like,
yeah.
But maybe he did know, but he just said, okay, like, in fairness, I've been out doing this for years. Let's not do this to her. And also, if you think about men back then and the ego and the whole, it's a man's world and you can't even have a checkbook. If you think about men back then, it probably would have held his ego more intact to put his name on my birth certificate than to think his wife was doing what he was doing.
Right. Yeah, that's totally plausible.
If there was any ego to it, would have been, my name's going on there because I'm not going to let you tell the world that you did what I'm doing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. I just know that he didn't pay child support, and then there was a little bit of guilt there too, like, is that what happened? Did he not pay? Because he was like, okay, this is theory. I'm going to pose a story for you.
Okay.
You're a man in the 60s. You got a big ego, right? You've been out playing the field. Now your wife might have done what you did. Again, no. That's not going to look good at the bowling alley with all your friends. You got to save face. You got to put your name on the birth certificate because you don't want your buddies to know that your wife is doing what you're doing. And the other part of the theory is, but it also is an excuse to say, I'm not paying child support. Look what you did. So all of a sudden, it's like flipping the script. But then there was a little bit of guilt, like, am I the reason she never got child support? Like, was he able to flip the script and point the finger at her and be like, yeah, I'm not the only one who did it. Look what you did. But my story is, she kind of had a right to do it because he was doing it for so long, for so many years, and she loved him, and he was not being a good husband.
Okay, so you kind of landed on a theory that maybe makes sense. It does make sense. You aren't necessarily going to know. Is there anyone in your story who is still alive that you can talk to, like aunts or uncles or cousins that may have heard gossip or anything like that?
So there's some stuff that happens in this world that you can't make up because it's so darn ironic. So I can tell none of my four sisters know, right? And again, the stuff they were coming up with was just noise, and it was toxic noise, and it was causing me more disruption to my emotional health. So I had one aunt who was alive, but my mom was not close to her. My mom had a brother and a sister. The brother's been passed for years. My mom and my quote dad were already passed. So I said to my sister, I'm going to call mom's sister. And my sister was like, Angie, she's not going to know anything. They weren't close at all. She never told her anything. I was like, that's fine. So I call my brother-in-law because I was like, hey, do you have her latest number? And he goes, it is so weird that you called. And I go, why? And he goes, she passed away last night. And I go, are you fucking kidding me? And he goes, why? Like, none of us were really close to her. Yeah. And I go, forget it. Just forget it. So I called my sister, and I had like a serious meltdown, and I was like shrieking. And I was like, what is it? The minute I get close to something, she goes, it's okay. She wasn't going to know anything. And I said, but it's just so ironic I finally get the courage to call her, and she literally passed away the night before, and she was like super old. So I called her daughter, and I was like, hey, here's the deal. And her daughter said, oh my gosh, Angie, I don't have words. I'm truly shocked. She goes, no, I guarantee you my mom didn't know. And she's like, I loved your mom so much. Like, your mom loved you guys. I just never would have expected that. So that went that one. So we're going through our like mental Rolodex. And I said, I'm going to call mom's best friend. She's still alive. So I called her one night. She claimed on her life she didn't know anything. She said, I met your mom when you were 4. We met at a department store. We worked at Turnstile together. You were already like 4. Your mom never said anything. She said, I swear, Angie, she never said a word. And she goes, I feel like she would have told me. But your mom was pretty private.
Did you reach out to anyone else trying to get clues, or was her best friend your last stop in people in her life?
No, there was one more. So my oldest daughter was very interested when all this first happened. So she does a lot of digging initially. She gets very invested in it for a short period of time, and she makes a tree and she gets it down. And she's like, she could tell the grandparents, she could tell there were 8 kids. She could tell who had gotten married. And then there was one outlier, one man who had not gotten married. We could trace them back to where we grew up. We could trace them back to what they did. I found the obituary of the one who never got married, but he would have been like 25 years older than my mom. And I was like, oh, mom was young. She was super hot, super attractive. Like, ugh, she would have never been like, no. And then, like, we know what they did. We know what they owned. We know their business. And it said in there that he loved to dance. And it named a specific place that he used to love to go dancing. Well, that's where my mom always went dancing.
Oh.
So about a year ago, I said to my one sister who I talked the most about, I said, I'm calling this gentleman who is my mom's friend. He is the spouse of my mom's other best friend. My mom's other best friend died like 20 years ago. I call him up and I get right to the point, and he immediately says, oh yeah, I know that story. Evelyn told me that was his ex-wife. And I said, huh, so mom told Evelyn? Yeah. And I go, well, mom was super private. I'm kind of surprised that if mom told Evelyn, she would tell you. He goes, we were married. It was pillow talk. That was literally quote unquote. So I said, okay, then who is it? Oh, I don't know. I go, okay. So, I have a different dad. You know the whole story, but you allegedly don't know who he is. I don't know. I go, I'm struggling with that. Oh, it's in the past, Angie. Just, you need to let it go. It's in the past. I said, well, there's something I've learned. I could go the rest of my life without somebody telling me how I should feel or what I should do about my own personal story. And trust me when I tell you, I'm going to try not to tell you how you should feel about things. Well, now I pissed him off. So I try to soften the conversation a little bit. And then he starts giving me BS. He's like, well, there's this man, blah, 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 blah. And he starts to build this whole story about this guy that he knew, that he had introduced my mom to, and that they were pretty smitten with each other. And it might be him. And I was like, is he Jewish? No, but it could be him. I go, well, it's not going to be him if he's not Jewish. Well, I'm going to call him anyway. I go, no, don't call him. We're not telling anybody. My sisters don't want me to tell anybody. They feel like that's a disservice to mom. Like I'm outing mom. Because that was the other thing. They didn't want me to tell anybody. I wasn't supposed to talk about it. And so finally I got to a point where I thought, you don't get to tell me not to tell my story. So I finally was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not playing. I'm not going to do this just because you think I shouldn't talk about it because you think it might put mom in whatever light. I'm sorry, this is my story. So he then builds this narrative about how it could be this one guy. So he goes, I'm going to give him a call. I'm going to give him a call right now. So of course he doesn't call me back. I call him a couple of weeks later. Oh yeah, I call him. He said it's not him. They go, yeah, well, I probably could have told you that because again, he's not Jewish. So I said, well, okay, there's a man. He used to go dancing where Mom used to go dancing. And I named the place. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember him. I go, you do? Oh, they used to love to dance. They were both great dancers. They were showstoppers. Like, they used to love to go dancing together. I bet it is. And I said, well, he was a lot older. Yeah, but he wasn't married. And that was as much as I got. That's the furthest I've gotten. There's other parts to the story that go into what I found on 23andMe. But as far as reaching out to people, that's all I had.
Okay. Now you have connections on 23andMe. What happens with those? And what was your closest connection?
There's a gentleman who shows up as my closest connection. And then there's another girl. And I can't remember what it is, what their relationship is. And I reach out to him, I message him on 23andMe, and he says, my daughter used to work for 23andMe. These stories happen all the time. It's very sad, and I quote, but just be happy you grew up in a good home. So once again, someone telling me how to feel. And it was all I could do not to send a few choice words back to him and say, thank you for mansplaining to me how I should feel and how I'm just so lucky that I grew up in a good home, when you don't know what I grew up in. Yes, it was a good home, but you don't know that. It's presumptuous. It's like, don't tell me what I should or shouldn't feel, or I should just be happy. And so I said, look, this has to do with health issues, because it really does. Like, I want to know, does that side have dementia? Does that side have heart disease? I want to know, because I know what my mom's side has. I know there's heart disease, there's dementia. I want to know what this side has. And he gave me a hard shutdown. I mean, be happy, feel this way. You had a good home. Go away, little girl. I mean, it was clear. Then he hides his tree. So I emailed the other girl. I don't hear back for a long time. Then I hear back and she says, we all got together for the holidays and we were talking about it. And we think there's only one person it could be, because we've never heard any stories. And it's the guy who was never married. In other words, we needed to be him because none of us want to think it was our dad. Right. So low-hanging fruit, got to be that guy. The guy who's not married, because it definitely isn't going to be my dad or grandpa. And then she hides her tree. And I was like, those bitches. Because I'm 60. I'm fine. I'm established. I don't want anybody's money. Jesus Christ. I just want to know my health. I want to know who he is. I want to know what happened, if there's anybody who knows. And I want to know what my health risks are. Is there heart disease? Is there dementia? What are the big things I should watch out for? Like Ashkenazi Jewish, very high risk for breast cancer. Hey, I might have wanted to know that. So there was one other girl. She's pretty far down. She was the only one who was lovely. And she goes, do you want me to ask my dad? My dad knows nothing, and it's pretty far removed. So she's like, I would talk to you anytime if you want to just hop on a call. And I never did follow through, because I'm thinking, she's so far over on the tree. I feel like it would just be telling a story that exhausts me, but not really getting anywhere. But she was lovely. I just don't think she has any information.
Have you done anything else to get any closer? Or is that kind of where it ends in terms of figuring it out?
It really ends there. I know there's DNA angels. I had a girl on my show, and she has a podcast. She is a researcher and does a lot with DNA. And I also reached out to another DNA person, and both of them were like, until more men test, and basically yours being that far back. And if it was this guy that seems to be the most suspect or the low-hanging fruit, he passed when my youngest daughter was born. He's been dead for years. Because again, he was like 25 years older than my mom. And so he had no kids, no spouse, so there's no one there. I have a feeling those two people who shut me out know something or have some suspicion. I mean, outside of showing up at their door one day, making them super uncomfortable and finding out where they live, and then potentially getting arrested and being a stalker, which, don't get me wrong, I think about daily. Trust me, I do. But
Yeah.
or hiring DNA angels just to see.
How have you, I guess, come to terms with, or not, the fact that you do have so many questions still?
I think I haven't. I think even though I teach clients and people that you can't pack it away, that again, it's like a leaky faucet. It's leaking. But I think it exhausts me both ways. It's like emotionally depleting. It's almost like not reaching out means that there still could be hope. But if you reach out and they shut you down, there's zero hope. So maybe it's me not reaching out or pursuing this is my way of protecting my heart. Because if they say hard no, we can't get anywhere, then I have to face that I'll never ever know. But by not pursuing it, my psyche can say, oh, if you really want to know, you'll find out. If you really want to know, you'll find out. But I think that there's a part of me that knows that that's probably not true. And so me doing that and then realizing I'm never going to know is a finality that I don't have to face by not pursuing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. It's like it's protective.
Yeah, I think it is. But it's not doing me any favors. It's not at all. But I think it is sort of protective because I'm so afraid they're going to say there's no hope.
So there are no siblings to be found that you know of, right? I mean, there could always be someone else out there, but to your knowledge, she doesn't have any other children.
That's what I keep hoping for. I keep hoping I'm going to open up 23andMe one day and I'm going to find a sibling. That is almost like a dream. Like he had another baby somewhere.
You mentioned earlier that you maybe haven't let yourself feel that full emotional breakdown around it. Do you still feel that in there? Have you processed it in some other way? 10 years is a long time. So how are you moving through this?
I think when you're in a dark spot about something in your life, all the other dark spots do a pile on. So usually when I'm stressed or I'm hurt or there's something else big going on in my life, my brain does a pile on and it goes into the, you don't even belong in your own family. She didn't even want you. She couldn't have had an abortion. Even if she wanted to have an abortion, she couldn't. She didn't even want you. You don't even belong. You weren't even meant to be here. And it goes to like the most horrific dark spaces. And it's like, where do you fit in? Because you're like a square peg in a round hole. You don't fit into your biological family. Because that is an interesting part of it too, as my sister who's next to me in line said to me one day, I hope you don't mind me saying this. And I said, well, now you gotta say it. She goes, it makes so much sense. And I go, what do you mean? And she goes, look at you and then look at us. She's like, you went out there, you got a degree, you got a master's degree, you like moved away, you went to college, you sort of like created this big life. And she goes, and the rest of us did it. And you've always been different. Like you've always been way more driven, more confident, more outgoing. You just have been different. It's true. You would not pick me and my sisters out from a lineup and put us together. And it is true. I am extremely different from all of them. I am much more driven. I am much more independent. I am the only one who moved away. I am the first one who went to college. I'm just different. And it definitely does make sense in that way. But my mind can go to some really dark spaces about being a square peg in a round hole.
What would you say is next for you?
I need to give myself a hard deadline and say, okay, you got to call DNA angels. You got to just fill out the paperwork. You got to do it. Stop denying it. I know it's protective, but it's not helping. And you really should just see. And if you find out that there's nothing to find out, at least you'll know and you can put it to rest. So I think that's probably what's next. And then hopefully connect with other people in my situation. I always believe that you take your pain and you give it purpose. So whether that means that I run a support group or I speak at a conference where people are struggling, I think I've been in the shadows for so long. I've been hiding for so many years now, 10 years now, that maybe it's time that I come out of the shadows and use my experience to help other people. I just never really knew if it was a story worth sharing because I don't have any answers. So I was like, my story's boring. I don't have any answers.
No, but as I always say, everyone is at a different point. And I think, I get messages from people all the time talking about how they heard some story or they heard some nugget from some story, whether it's very similar to theirs or different, but it helped them. And I think that it is helpful for people to hear that there's somebody else who doesn't have answers, that they're not alone, that not everybody uncovers every scrap of information. I hope that you do get your answers and that the DNA angels or someone else is able to help you find him. But your story is absolutely worth telling, whether or not you know for sure at this point.
Yeah. Like I said, I always just thought it would be too boring. There's no closure. It's not wrapped up in a pretty package. It's not a Hallmark story. It doesn't end with my family embracing me and being like, oh my God, we've been hoping you would come forward.
They don't, though. They don't always end up that way. What advice do you have for someone who may be keeping a DNA surprise from their child?
First, I want to say that I have a ton of compassion and empathy because, again, I can see where it's a very difficult space because you don't want that kid to be the one kid. Like in my situation, I can't imagine that my mom would have wanted me to be the kid who had to leave on the holidays and be away from all of us. That would have made me always feel like I didn't belong. And now I already feel like I don't belong, but at least I didn't have to feel like that growing up. That's just my ugly parts telling me I don't belong, but at least I didn't have to grow up experiencing that. So I would just say, wait it out. And at some point, maybe when your child gets older, find a time, because I don't think dying with a secret is a good thing. I think that secrets never stay secrets. Somehow, some way, secrets never stay secrets. And if you die with that secret, you risk that your child will resent you for the rest of your life. I don't resent my mom. I feel a lot of empathy for her, but I also feel a lot of pain for me. I feel a lot of tremendous pain for me. But I think my mom is lucky that I don't resent her because I think there's probably a lot of people who do. So don't spend all those years raising your child trying to be a good parent, only to when you're gone and you don't have answers and you can't defend yourself. Have your child come up with all these stories that could be so far from the truth and then risk that they could resent you for the rest of their lives. And not to mention, you're really going to mess them up psychologically.
And what advice do you have for someone who just uncovered a DNA surprise?
Get support. There are people in my life who I wanted to support me who were not able or were not willing. But some of my friends were amazing. But I usually use humor. So humor is always my defense. So I called a few of my friends, like who I knew were Jewish. We had a good laugh and they sent me some funny stuff. And it was all ha, ha, ha. But there was pain underneath that. But humor helped me. But go get some support. Sometimes people dismiss what they don't know or what feels too heavy for them. And so sometimes even your closest people are going to disappoint you because they don't have the tools or they don't understand why it would bother you. They just don't get it. They're like, oh, whatever. Like, they're dead. Who cares? Like, you had a good growing up. Go back to what I said, a personal narrative disruption. It makes you question your whole life. Every single piece of your history is in question. Every single holiday, every story, every memory is in question about the reality versus the truth. How much of that was real and how much of that was people hiding or keeping something from you? It disrupts everything you thought about your childhood. So you need to get support. And if I'm going to be just very frank about something, I'm angry with these testing companies. They put the cart before the horse. I'm angry. And that's where I do get angry and spicy and I go off on my bandwagon. How dare they offer all these testing services and they open up Pandora's box, but they offer no services for psychological wellness and, helping people who might really not be able to cope with this. shame on these companies. Shame on these companies for putting it out there and then just making people deal with the aftermath.
I completely agree. I have written impassioned emails to 23andMe and Ancestry because I think that leaving links on their website and like an email of here's a list of 4 websites to go to for support is not enough. It's
and
not
that's
enough.
new. That wasn't even there before.
It wasn't there before. I want to say within the last few years, I really feel like they should have departments of well-being providers. I realize they might not be able to be like licensed counselors for people, but somebody to really support people in those initial moments because it's so raw. It is so raw before you can, connect them to a professional or something in their area. But there needs to be more than just, this happens sometimes. So sorry. Here's a link.
Yeah, because it's like a suicide hotline. Like you need immediate, to your point, resources.
Angie, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast and sharing your story. I know that you weren't sure if your story was worth telling, so to speak, because you don't have all of the answers, but I think that makes your story just as powerful as anyone else's. And I hope that you do get the answers that you're looking for.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks again to Angie for sharing her story. If you have a DNA surprise that you'd like to share, submit your story at dnasurprises.com. And for early, ad-free access to episodes, join me over on Patreon at patreon.com/DNA Surprises. Until next time. This episode of DNA Surprises was hosted, produced, and edited by me, Alexis Auersalt. It was mixed and mastered by Josh Auersalt of Siren Recordings.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
That's the sound of the fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron and the quiet confidence of ultra-smooth handling. The elevated interior reminds you this is more than an EV. This is electric performance redefined.
Studios.